And welcome to the spotlight on the one, the only Mr. Priestify. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. I was not aware of you until our mutual friend of ours, Scarspeeder, told me about you, and I was like, "This is a man I have to speak to, a priest, Church of England, who plays DayZ."
Yeah, it's I'm pretty new. I've been playing and streaming since sort of late last year, but I've been gaming
Yep.
for a long time, and so yeah, enjoying it.
So there's so much to unpack there because I'm certain anyone who watches this will probably have a lot of the same sort of questions as I do. But I think we'll go way, way, way back. How did you end up deciding to pursue, well, not a career, but a life in the priesthood?
So yeah, I mean, it's something which really does go far back in terms of I didn't grow up going to church from a religious family, anything like that. I mean, I grew up gaming and sort of that came first,
Whereabouts in
and it was
England?
a town called or a city called Newcastle, sort of
Yep,
northeast.
I've heard of Newcastle. Yep.
Yeah, so from there, born to a parents ended up having a single mother, sort of council estate background. So,
Oh, you're a
you
chav.
know what? Oh, 100%, 1,000%. Yeah. It was interesting. I've been in contact recently with some people from where I was from, and it's sort of just amazing thinking the memories. It was, there's some ropey times. But yeah, so it was just, didn't have any sort of church background whatsoever. I first got involved in the sort of alternative music scene and sort of emo goth type culture. And then out of nowhere, seemingly, decided to start going to church when I was a teenager, and really just found that I was able to be helped by people. I didn't sort of have my dad around. I had a lot of issues. I was able to just find people who wanted to spend time with me and on me and support me. And so one way or another, I basically went through the process of deciding that I wanted to work for a church, of going to study at a Bible college. I met my wife actually, who suggested the Church of England because I was going to churches where you'd never know that someone was an ordained minister. They'd be dressed like I am now, and it was all about trying not to be sort of super religious looking.
Hmm.
But I ended up going to college, met my wife, and she suggested the Church of England just from the point of view of the pastoral care. And so, in essence, I ended up getting. I think I was maybe about 25 when I got ordained, and I'm 31 now. The youngest you can get ordained is
It's so
23.
It's
So
so
obviously that's
unusual
like
for a young white person these days to want to pursue a career. Like I know even here in Australia, a lot of our priests are from third world countries. We've got a lot of
yeah.
Africans, a lot of subcontinent, and so on. Thank you so much, Dux, for the $3 there, buddy. But it's um, it's such a strange world we live in now, where um, yeah, so many people in the West are turning away from religion, or
Mm.
were, but there seems to be a bit of a revival happening. And for someone of your age, without having that, almost indoctrination upbringing that a lot of people in religion do get, to choose to do it, like I'm fascinated to hear more about what motivated you to do that.
Sure. Yeah, and I think having that lack of a sort of childhood background of it, it was never something that I was made to do, and so it was something that I wanted to do. As I say, the sort of first turning point of my life really was meeting friends who got me into sort of alternative and sort of heavy music. So it was I first sort of Green Day and Linkin Park, and then it was
Yep.
heavier stuff. So I ended up being a 12-year-old who was decidedly atheist, who was sort of getting drunk every weekend, but had a group of friends who were sort of part of a culture that was sort of seen as separate to everybody else. I never sort of felt like I fit in, but I'd found a place that welcomed me, and this is fantastic. Now I remember being there was this place we called the Green because it was where all the sort of hippies hung out, and then the goths. And my sort of early experiences of speaking to people who were Christians, it was like we'd be stood around, and an old couple would come up to me on the street and asked if I'd been fornicating. I was like, what's that mean? I was like, well, so you got people preaching to you on the street. I'm thinking, I don't want anything to do with this. Religion is what makes people weird, and it's what makes wars happen and things like that. But I was able to just go along to, I think it was a youth club with some friends who I didn't really have anything better to do, and they were just the
So,
message
see,
was
I,
about.
I need to go back. Did they actually use the word fornicating?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And how
100%.
and
I,
how
I
old
didn't know
were
what
you?
that meant. Oh, like 13 or something. I was just like, I don't know what fornicate. It's
Yeah,
so like that, but that's the picture that you have is like stuffy, sort of older people who have never spoken to someone in their life, but they've, and bless them, they think that they're doing something really helpful, but they're going around asking all these emos and goths if they've been fornicating. I mean, it makes me cringe so much. That's not the sort of person that I try to be. Going from that to ultimately, really, as I say, just going along to this youth group, and I mean, it was like people expect. It was sort of table tennis and games, and then when they had the sort of God slot where they would talk about the message, I'm like just not interested at all. But I started to listen over time and found that actually this was a message of inclusion. It was a message of love. I'd started to found that there was a lot of sort of charities and people in the alternative music scene who really spoke about hope, about love, and it was just something that I started to listen to a little bit. And I guess I had to deal with later all of the reservations that anybody would have, particularly those days. I mean, that would have been 15 years ago.
Mm.
Even more so, it was the height of sort of new atheism, and it was especially unpopular to be someone who went to church or a Christian. But I was just like, well, this is something which has really captured my imagination, and so I decided to start going to church. And I just had, it was obviously very different. Music was totally different. It still is. But I just had the experience of people who wanted to care for you. And I ultimately ended up going to quite a big church, but one that had music that was, pretty decent. And so being able to meet people my age, being able to listen to music that I enjoyed, but also have the positivity of sort of youth leaders and people who really took me under their wing, it was a way for me to experience things I never could have before.
Mhm.
I still found going all the youth groups and stuff that I maybe couldn't afford, the trips that they were going on or the different things because of my background. But it was just obviously the message, but particularly the way in which I was just given time and space and helped, and I felt like I could belong in a way that I'd only found really through music before then.
What did all your little buddies think at the time when you started getting away from getting drunk and fornicating on the streets with your buddies and hanging around with a church group?
Well, interestingly, I've been in touch with people recently, and I've been like so apologetic because for years I've sort of carried this idea of, oh, and nobody likes me because I was, because I thought I've really been just awful. I went initially through the very sort of judgmental phase where I was like, oh, what's everyone doing, and why are you doing this? You should be going to church, and so I lost touch with a lot of those people, and I felt really ashamed of that. But getting in touch with them, actually, people have found that although they've said they didn't understand it, they always thought that I was a good person, and that now it sort of makes sense that I did what I did. That I clearly wanted to care for people. I mean, this is the thing, because we were 12 before we were 20, and everyone I was hanging out with was probably 16 anyway. With all the different relationships and this person getting with this person, the drinking, I really was at quite a young age, probably not that pleasant, really. And yet, fantastically, the people who I speak to have had really positive memories, and are really supportive now of what I was doing. I don't think I had anyone who really sort of took the mick at that stage, who really sort of, was having a laugh with it. I think it was more that I separated myself because I believed at the time that that's what you needed to do. And that was
Mhm.
one of the things which I've tried to sort of fight back against since, was this idea that there's a sort of sacred and a secular, and never the twain shall meet sort of thing. That's really my project, is to try and dispel that rumor that you can't have any sort of spirituality or religion and be a normal person.
Would you something that I've spoken about in some of the interviews, about the positive male role models and that. Would you say the lack of a father figure in your youth was part of the reason why you did go off the rails a bit, and that's what you were able to find in the church group, a more positive?
100%.
Because I'm certain you had male role models, but they probably just weren't the best when you were on the being a little shit running around the neighborhood.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, first of all, but as I say, when we were sort of in the city centre and we were going to these, and I was part of this community, it was amazing because so many people had been sort of hanging out for years. You had older people who would look after the younger people. But I'd come from, as I say, my parents split up when I was 7. I didn't really see my dad for a lot of years until quite recently. And so yeah, people who were around were men who lied, who cheated, who stole, who were domestically violent, who were drunks, on drugs. And so I just didn't have that. And so I think the big turning point really was particularly this one youth leader, Mark, who was a dad to me, who really sort of took his time for me, who spent time with me, who gave me advice. That was probably the biggest thing, really. And I think that's what I want to try and provide for others, is just somebody to care for them, somebody to listen for them, in a way that doesn't expect anything in return. You know, it's great that I've been able to do what I'm doing now, but I don't think they had in mind, oh yeah, this is this pipeline for making young priests. It was just, you know, we want to care for young people and support them, and it's made the biggest difference in my life in terms of those positive role models, definitely.
One of the things I do like about the Church of England, like for those who don't know, I was very religious in my childhood. Like I was the opposite of you. I was raised in a strict Roman Catholic household with my nana. And when I say strict, it wasn't strict in a bad way. It was just she adhered to the Bible and the guidance. Like we did the full Latin masses, everything. She
Mm,
was my rock. I love my nana so much. I've still got. I think it's off the back here somewhere. I keep it somewhere safe. Her Bible, King James Bible from the turn of the century.
mm,
She's got little handwritten notes. That's the one we used to read from every day. Like, and I drifted away from my faith in my childhood too. But at the time when I was very into it, like all of my family, they were convinced I was going to become a priest myself because I was, uh, this is how like full on I was. I thought Kiss was evil. I had my own kids version of the Bible, and I had paper on it, and I used to write all these biblical messages. And the one I still remember is "Kiss is evil," with his tongue and all the rest of it. And there,
yeah.
yeah, that's how indoctrinated I was. But one of the things I love with the Church of England is, yeah, you said before about your wife, and I think that's probably one of the key things is that you're pretty much allowed to have still a normal life around your faith, and that's definitely going to make it a bit more attractive to a lot of young people like yourself.
Yeah, yeah, it's changed a lot in terms of. So I mean, when I was first going to church, it was sort of Pentecostal churches like that. But the Church of England is the state church. There's a lot of things in which, you know, it's very sort of institutional. But actually, as a young person who was getting into the priesthood, they're very keen to make sure that when you're asking questions, that you're not just after sort of money or whatever, because you get
Yeah.
a stipend so that you can live. You're provided with a house. I'm able to be married. I'm able to sort of have friends and do other things. And so I think the reason I use the language of priest is because people know that my job title is priest in charge, or people think of vicar, and then they think of, Father Ted or the Vicar of Dibley or
I
whatever.
love that show.
Um,
Are you a racist now, Father? Oh, that is one of the funniest shows. British comedy
Someone
is
was
the
asking
best.
me yesterday which one of them that I would be, and I was like, I sort of hope Dougal, because he's just sort of quite funny and doesn't really know what he's doing. You don't want to be too serious. You don't want to be too drunk. Those are probably the categories of priests. There's too serious and there's too drunk,
Yeah.
and everything in between is okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a good church in terms of there's a huge variety. The Church of England has got this sort of classic, sort of British wanting to sort of please everyone and sit on the fence. And so you can have churches which are very Baptist or Pentecostal, where the music could be, I've known people who have done a sort of a heavy metal mass or whatever. From sort of churches that I'm more involved in are quite Catholic in their style and sort of bells and smells. And as I say, for me, it's always been interesting to see that, because particularly someone from my background would hear the music or see the style of the robes and run a million miles away. But I did an interview when I first came here, and I think there's something about the use of the senses and the sort of visceral nature of the service, which is what resonates with me. So, I'd much rather, in lots of ways, be in a mosh pit or at a gig or something. But it's the fact that actually this is a sort of whole body experience where, based on what you can smell and what you can see, it sort of takes you into a different world. That's what I'm looking for, whether it's through sort of football, obviously soccer for our American viewers, which is my other great love from Newcastle. Whether it's through that, whether it's through music or through church, it's just this sort of bodily experience of being in a place and being able to experience stuff. That's really what I've always looked for, I think, in terms of the things that I've got involved with.
It is a big thing. The Catholic Church is notorious for a lot of that. Very. I don't know what it's like now, but I remember from my childhood, incense and the hymns and all the rest of it. And I
Mm,
know the Eastern Orthodox or Russian Orthodox. We went to a couple of those just to see them when I was on holiday there, and the smell and the heat. inside their churches was just insane. And the
Mm.
robes, beautiful churches. They really do know how to make a beautiful church. But yeah, but now I kind of want to go into, you started streaming, and you picked,
Mm.
of all games, probably one of the hardest games to, like, not that you'd have to justify it, but man, Daisy is a game where anything can happen, and I'm certain you've had some weird shit happen
Yeah.
when you're streaming and that. What made you pick a game like Daisy to play and stream online?
It was just something that I enjoyed. It's never been something that I've wanted to do sort of for religious purposes, although I'll get on
Yep.
to why I'm called Priestify in a moment. But it was just, I think it was 10 years ago or something. I remember coming across Daisy and watching videos of the sort of the armor. I remember looking up buying Armor 2 and then getting the mod and all that stuff. And I never did it. So it was probably years ago I was first watching Daisy, but then not for ages. I've always sort of watched gaming stuff on YouTube and sort of streams and games. And then maybe a year ago or 18 months ago, I was starting to see some videos. They were probably either Sour Sweet or the Running Man's, but sort of watching some of these, lone wolf sniper videos just by myself. And as I often do, because I'm sort of, my watch later thing on YouTube is just goes on forever. I sort of showed my wife one or two of these videos, and then thought nothing of it. But she actually really enjoyed it. And so we started to watch more and more Daisy videos together. Um, and so at a certain point, we were like, "Oh, well, we should try and play this." So I wheeled out my sort of really old Xbox One. I could barely run Daisy, and it was a terrible experience. I think I got it on the Game Pass. I managed to plug a keyboard and mouse in, but as people sort of say, particularly when it's not a next gen console, it was really hard to run. Um, and we decided really that, like a lot of people do, we wanted to save up and buy a PC to play Daisy. I played Daisy for a little bit, and I mean, even now I've only got about 300 hours, so I'm super new to the game. But probably one of my first times playing, I was playing with Lottie,
Yep.
who's a streamer, and I was just on an open server, and I think someone in the comments said something like, commented on my microphone or on my voice or something like that, and said, "Oh, he sounds like a streamer." And so I just thought, "Oh, that's interesting." Talking to some of my old friends, I'd made YouTube videos 15, 20 years ago of us playing World of Warcraft or us playing horror games. I've always sort of been a bit of wanted to be a bit of an entertainer sort of thing. Um, and so I thought, oh, well, I could play. That would be interesting. It would sort of help me to make friends and get to know people. And so I just decided to go for it, and it's gone from there. It's as I say, and the reason I call myself Priestify, I was originally called Priest Daisy because I thought there's two ways that people can go with this sort of thing. They can either hide altogether what their job is, but then what would I talk about? Or you get some people who do it as like a right, I'm going to be sat there in my dog collar and it's going to be like a religious show, and I was like, I don't really want to do either of those. I want to do what I would do with anything, which is try and be normal. And so I'm going to make it known that this is what I'm going to do. It leads to all sorts of conversations. It hopefully, fulfills my sort of life mission of trying to build bridges and show people that this can be normal in a sense, even though it's a bit weird. Um, but it's never going to be something where people feel preached at or they feel,
Yep. You've got to let
like
the
they've come into
conversation go
some.
naturally.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that actually there's some people who that would really, people wouldn't be interested in that. And so I try to make it clear while also making it quite inclusive. I want to sort of stream for the sake of it. I enjoy it. It's nice to, be able to get a little bit of income to spend on the PC setup or whatever. But what really is special for me is being able to have these conversations where it's actually just about life, about big issues, is about just things that matter to people. And I think that when I'm not freaking out and dying repeatedly on Daisy, I think what a lot of people do get out of it is just quite a nice chilled out atmosphere, is sort of good conversation. And what I just love about Daisy is the storytelling, is the interaction. And so I'm hoping to do more of that and just introduce new people to the game more than introduce people to my beliefs.
But we just got you into the Creator Club. How are you finding that?
Really helpful. I was straight away, I was able to get some feedback on a video. I've sort of
Mm.
re-edited that and sort of put it back out, and it's immediately done better than before.
Mhm.
Yeah, just amazing to see people who are just getting started, like myself, as well as some sort of bigger names. So I really appreciate just being able to ask questions because I really like, training in church or anything. I really, with something that I enjoy, I really try and just sort of make myself a sponge and sort of just take it all in and learn as much as I can. And I'm more interested in the process of that than I am in, you know, being a huge success or anything like that.
It's a great little thing, and yeah, a little bit of a plug here, folks. If you are interested, or you're a small up and coming streamer, content creator, YouTuber, hit us up in the 878 Discord, discord.gg/878 Survivor FM. There's an application form there, and pretty much, I don't think I've said no to anyone. It's really just there just to, you know, just do a quick basic screen, let you know the rules of what the group are, which is pretty much. Don't be a dick is pretty much about the only rule. It's there to just help people, you know, as you're wanting to do, Priestify, and just helping people grow and get bigger. And just it's a great little 76 members we're at now, which is fantastic. So how have you been finding DayZ to play?
Good. I mean, yeah, like you say, hard. I have always been someone who's not been the best at games. So put that in perspective. My wife would say that. I mean, she's never played PC games, and so she's sort of learning keyboard and mouse, all that sort of stuff. But what I mean is, so I studied at college. So before we go to university in the UK, we'd go to college and do sort of like it was a BTEC. It was called for me. So sort of after high school, but before college. And I went and I studied video games. So I always thought that I would actually go into working in IT or working in games development. And so from a young age, we've been playing games. We were playing sort of Counter-Strike. We were, you know, I was playing Call of Duty from a young age, but I've never been that good at games myself. And so coming into DayZ, as I say, I love the interaction. I love the sandbox. I love the survival. But from a PvP perspective, I absolutely suck. And it is amazing to see the progress. But yeah, I mean, as it goes from a game, I think you do occasionally get people who think, "Oh, it's a zombie game or whatever." But as I say, nothing particularly shocks me in terms of from a religious point of view. I think sometimes people think, "Oh, you know, you're going around and you're killing people and you know, try to be a good person."
It's a game.
Yeah. I'm like it's not something I worry about, and I think because of my
Have you
sort of
ever
family
played an
background.
evil character?
No, it's something I would do. It's something I just it doesn't come naturally to me. And if I've met someone and I've started to talk to them, I then feel like right, I can't kill this person. I need to get I need to get better on sort of kill on sight if I'm going for that sort of thing or a cannibal run or whatever. But I just feel so guilty. It's funny. Like I want to play differently, but I feel so guilty. I've got a video where there was a guy who I met who was role playing Dexter from Dexter. And we were together for like 3 hours, and he kept dropping hints, and then he killed me at the end. And I was like, you know what, fair play, because it was so well executed that I couldn't even be mad. And what I don't want, which is stupid, I know, is I don't want people being like, oh, there was that guy who called himself priest, and then he you know stabbed me in the back. I like it when I see on a stream where someone says, "Oh, my name's," and then they, you know, I tell someone I'm called Boydie, and then I kill them. That's quite. I'd rather do that than them think it was me. But I just love that you can be who you want to be. You can be who you want
It's
to be. You
great
can play
in
how you
that
want to play.
aspect. And it's kind of weird that this video game that is not real, but so many people do struggle with the morals that they have to let them
Yeah.
go. And I do sometimes be a bad guy. What I really enjoy doing is making deals behind the scene. I love playing on sort of like faction and base building servers, and you know,
Mm.
but basically conspiring and stuff like that. But I really do struggle to just out and out kill someone betrayal wise, because I just don't have that in me. It's weird. I used to, but I kind of suck at PvP as well, which makes it a bit harder. There's always that fear of if I screw this, it's going to be even more embarrassing. But it's an amazing game. I did ask you in the lead up to this. I'm certain this is a question a lot of people have. How do you feel when you have to kill a pre-zombie?
It's great. I just think it's so funny, and I like I think it's on the Zero servers. You get the sort of like clerical collar shirt, so I'm sort of running around in
Yep.
that. I just find it amazing, and I've been looking recently. Like it's you know ridiculous, really. But I know Cooper did a video about how many people lived in Chernoris and
Yep.
sort of counting all the places. I was sort of looking at all the churches and trying to figure out because they're sort of you know, they are sort of Eastern Orthodox type churches.
Yes.
Interestingly, a lot of them have got pews in, whereas in a lot of Orthodox churches, a lot of people would be stood. And so
Yes,
it's just
they
this
are.
thing of like, how does religion fit into this? And it's just this sort of daft thing, really. I think someone on Twitter was asking about sort of religion in the apocalypse, and obviously that's such a theme within different stories and games and
Mm.
films and stuff. So no, I just find it really funny. I enjoy it, and most of all, like I say, what I like is the fact that people aren't usually toxic. I really like that people are toxic. I haven't played so much of the sort of RP side of things myself. I was looking recently at an RP server, and I'd love to do some sort of like chaotic good, where it's like good to the point where you're trying to please everybody, and so that means that you're not actually really on anybody's side because you're constantly playing people off. I could do that sort of thing. But in terms of the zombies and the shooting and the sort of, I
Daisy
think,
Underground
as
might be a good one for you,
yeah,
because that's
yeah,
an
I've
organic
looked at
role
that.
play, and the ping would be
Yeah,
okay for you.
yeah, I've looked at that, and then I've looked at. I know there's the new Hey Bombi Livonia one as well, which
I
a lot of
don't
people have been
know.
playing at the
I
moment.
don't know whether they've got it going still, but they had. I think it was called St. Joseph's, and it was the barn that is just outside of. I can't remember the name of the city, but it's the one just south of Novi, up in the northeast corner there, where the fire station is. And there's a barn out there, and that used to be like a community-run, and they just called it St. Joseph's, even though it was a barn. But there was always community supplies there. There was always crops there, and that would be something good to see come back to the lore of. Because for those who don't know, Daisy Underground is the first ever community server, and it's still going.
Mm.
And despite what was alleged in a recent video, it is a great server. And something like that would be fantastic to see, because there's just so much lore associated with this. It's never not run. It's always been going. I don't think there's any other server that comes even remotely close to that length. And yeah, I think you could have a lot of fun with having your flock of survivors. And I actually like doing things like that myself, is just rounding up people who are solos and telling them, here's my base, giving them access to a certain area of it, and just say, I'm not telling you have to be part of my clan or anything, but this is just somewhere you can come. If you need something and I've got it, I'll give it to you. And just almost trying to do good, because it's a big thing that a lot of people forget with a game like DayZ is, you say you generally always try to be nice in that, but it's important more than just on a spiritual level. It's also about just trying to give people enjoyment, because with a game like DayZ, it's a very intensive game, isn't it? A lot of time and effort and hours go into it, and you've got to consider the well, you should. You don't have to. You could do whatever you want. Your free will and all the rest of it. But you got to try to always remember the consequences of your actions on someone. And I always try to tell people that, you said with this guy Dexter, who the signs were there, and he eventually got you, and you didn't care that he killed you, because it was an experience. And that's one of the things I try to push for people, that PvP is only one very small aspect. A lot of people crack on about it, but for me, it's only a very small part of it. I don't think they really need to do massive changes to PvP in DayZ. It works. You could kill someone, they can kill you, you could die instantly. But I would love to see more work in the other things where you can create more of a story, because you'll never forget Dexter. But you probably got KOS 4 times last week. You probably can't remember all of them. 4 months ago, you're not going to remember those ones, but those special interactions where you made a moment, whether it was a good or a bad one, as my mate Archie and people like that have done, they're comedy gold. Have you ever seen any of those where they just
I don't think
torment
so.
people? Oh, mate, they are phenomenal, because they're giving people a memory. It's like basically like what Dexter did with you. He played you along, the long con, and then Archie's done ones where he convinces people that he knows a hack to make you go God mode, and he basically just gets them to F11, and they do it over and over again, and he just keeps doing it to them, and it's funny. because you're creating a moment, a memory, and those betrayals and the relationships you can form, even if it's only a small temporary one for a few hours, they're invaluable, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think just when I think of someone who's playing or somebody who's watching the stream, I mean, obviously there's so many different people who play, and that's the variety that I love about DayZ in terms of the age, the gender, the background of the person playing. But I often think if someone's sort of coming into my stream, they're quite often a guy or a girl who's maybe in their sort of 30s, who's got a busy job, who's got things to do, but they just come in to switch off. And they just want to enjoy themselves, and they just want to be part of something. They want to have a story, and I just love, it's the ultimate example in a positive way of what people can get out of gaming. And so I'm often having conversations where I'm trying to explain games to people, and I'm saying, it's not Fortnite, it's not somebody screaming at someone for hours and spending all their money on this thing. It's people making friendships. It's them going on walks. It's them learning how to talk to people. It's them learning how to sort of make friends. It was the sort of early days of friends I've had who were really into World of Warcraft. It wasn't just that it was super addictive. It was that they learned how to manage finance in a guild. It was they learned how to interact with people and diffuse tension. They learned how to meet strangers and introduce themselves. It's just all those things that if you're not getting, and for me, like I was 12 months ago, I was off sick from work with stress, and I wasn't really spending time with friends. I wasn't really interacting with anyone. And now to have had all these amazing moments where on a day-to-day basis you're meeting people, and then they're teaching you things or whatever, and then you never see them again. I've also got so many people who I've sort of, we've connected on Discord and we chat regularly. It's just I've never known another game like it in terms of that ability to make friends and
Mhm.
memories, but also just the stupid things that people do are just so funny. And you couldn't get that if it was all kill on sight, or if it was all, Counter-Strike, toxic, screaming racism, or cheating. It's just so unique. And so I
Yeah.
want to share that with people. And do it myself. People will often say, "Oh, do you not want to play over games?" And I'm like, "Well, I will play over games, but they just feel like, I don't know. They just People always say, don't they, that as stressful as DayZ is, you can also really switch off because you're so
Yes.
consumed by it.
Yep.
It's just fantastic.
It's a great game to do with streaming as well, because when the shit hits the fan, it goes from 0 to 100 in a second. But there's
Yeah.
so much downtime where you can just either chat with the people who are watching you play or chat with the people in game, and the friendships you can form in something like this, as opposed to sitting for 2 minutes in a lobby waiting for the next turn. Play that game where it's a high intensity, fast action, and then you're all in a different lobby the next game. You can't form those sorts of
Yeah.
bonds like you can in a game like DayZ. Yes, you have to meet someone, and you have to hope that they don't kill you. But there's so many things you can do to try to control the way that an interaction goes. And there's some great videos out there. A mate of mine, Vigilante, he's got some good videos on that. And there's so many things you can do to try to get more than just a battlefield or an armor sort of lobby where it's just shoot and kill everyone on the opposing side. And it's great in this because you just don't know who the enemy is.
Oh, 100%. And I think there's so many people who I talk to, and they're giving me advice. It's fair enough, but people say again and again, "Oh, don't never trust anyone." And I'm like, just the best, and sometimes that's fine, but the best memories happen where you do trust somebody and you take a chance on somebody. And it's like that in life as well. You could go through. Now, usually people aren't gonna hopefully kill you and eat you in real life, but you never know. But in generally, where you trust people, where you take a chance, where you sort of make a friendship, you reach out, those are going to lead to the best memories. And so, yeah, I could, if I'd play another game if I just wanted to improve my shooting skills and I wanted to be really good at PvP, but I just wouldn't get any of these other experiences
Yeah.
and just hilarity in ways that you don't expect as well.
I say that all the
Yeah,
time.
it's just
I don't
great.
want to get better at PvP because I like the fact that when it does happen, I'm not that trying to speak of the word for it. I'm not that used to it that it doesn't get a reaction from me. Yeah, I hear a shot, I see a player, my blood pressure goes up, my heart rate quickens, and
Mm.
I'll open up the Windows menu and bloody Alt Shift Tab and all the rest of it, in panicking, fat finger keyboarding and that. But I like
Yeah.
that, because it's meant to be a game that gives you a thrill, and I think people who aren't getting that have probably been playing too much of just the PvP focus service. And great, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But I prefer the servers that aren't like Grand Central Station, where actually seeing and hearing someone is a genuine, oh shit, what's going on over there, and
Mm.
sitting back and trying to watch. And every now and then I'll go jump on a server like Namols, which is a lot busier. But for the most part, I don't want it to be people running around everywhere. I want it to be, I like getting lost in my own thoughts and just tinkering, pottering, looting my way around. And yeah,
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I think, I'm talking and chat's quiet or whatever, and I'll think, oh, am I boring? Is it okay? But actually, people just enjoy just sort of relaxing, and as I say, I
like
think
you
for a lot
said,
of
they just
people,
want to switch off.
streams are like yeah, it's like a podcast. It's like an opportunity to just listen to something, just to chill. There's lots of ambient sound. It's nice, and so I really appreciate that as well.
You look at a lot of YouTube videos as well, and some of the comments on it. Some of the people who I watch their gaming videos of, and so many people just leave comments saying, "I don't game. I don't have a computer, or I just don't have the time to game. But I do find some time to sit down and have a coffee or something like that, and I just like to watch you play the game." And it's one of those things when people uh, you get a lot of particularly older people, boomer sort of mentality. What, you watch people play video games, and I always come back to them and go, "What, you watch people play football?"
Yeah, yeah. And it's just an understanding thing, and I think
Yeah.
I've been able to sort of share what I've been doing with either people in the church, in the community, or even like my sort of in-laws. Weren't suspicious of it, but actually have been able to watch along and enjoy it, and sort of get a little bit about what it is that people are interested in. And it's just a way of unwind. I was having a conversation with someone about this yesterday. It's just a different way to unwind, and particularly in the days where people are watching a lot of YouTube on TV now. It's
Hmm.
not usually just on their phone. It's more than anything on TV. People, that it's like they're putting their show on, but they're just relaxing and watching somebody play a game. It's I think even in the years that I've been sort of on the internet, it feels like it's a lot more normal now than it used to
Yeah.
be. And that'd be the same. There'd be people who play, I sometimes watch people play Rust. I'm not interested in playing Rust at all, but with the sort of way they do the music and the style, it's just so relaxing, and I fall asleep to it. I,
Yeah.
I like it. I'd never play it, but I enjoy watching the videos because it's the story, and that's really what I want to try and bring about. It's so hard, I think, like we've said, it's so hard from the side of being the creator to actually be functional enough at the game to be able to create those stories and those memories, and not just instantly, step on a bear trap and then kill yourself or whatever. But when you get that good story and you're able to share it with other people, it's there's just something human about wanting to connect with others, and or just be stupid and have a good time. As you can do either. I love it.
How does the church, or what does the church think of you doing this, playing video games and streaming, and being not, you're not like a one of those televangelists or anything like that, but you're open about the fact that you are a vicar with the Church of England. What are their thoughts on it?
I think it's something which is still sort of quite new, is sort of getting out there. I mean, this is the sort of thing that I'll share on Facebook and stuff, and people will be able to have a look at. And I hope that I represent myself in a way that means that whoever is interested, that they could enjoy it and they could try and grasp it a little bit. So yeah, so it's something that's very new. I think, I say, being a younger person anyway, people are always fascinated by whenever I've done sort of videos or anything that is sort of just new media in a sense, is using any sort of social media. People have always sort of enjoyed that because it catches the attention of people who are outside the church and shows them a little bit of what we do. I'm actually, at the moment, as of this week, I've got 4 weeks off on sabbatical. So I've got a sabbatical which you can have every 3 years for 1 month, or every 10 years for 3 months. And the sort of the subject, and it sounds like a bit of a fudge really, but the subject for the sabbatical is streaming, in the sense of not trying to make it a religious thing, but looking at how we can, the different ways in which actually you can build community through online means. And so it's not like I'm going to be writing essays about that, but I'd already have examples of of ways that could be used by churches or in order to speak about faith. But where I'm interested in it really, as I say, is that intersection of like to be a normal person, like to play games, like to have conversations about anything that people do, but really just wants to show to people who would otherwise have no connection with and no interest with, and potentially even a disdain for any sort of religion, that it's totally possible for you to make your own choices and for you to decide that this is something that you want. And there are ways into that. And so if in anything, from a from a church point of view or from an online point of view, someone just needed someone to talk to. They don't want to talk about religion. They don't want to talk to but they just want someone who's going to listen to them, who's used to people's problems, who is there for people. If all that happens is occasionally somebody says, "Oh, say a word for me, mate," or whatever, and I'm able to be that person, that's what I'm here for. I've already got viewers who I've not pushed in any way towards church or God or anything like that, but they'll be sort of giving me updates on their life and sort of asking if I can pray for them or whatever. And so for me, it's just taking the good of what we've got in our sort of in our faith and being able to share that without any expectation to others and show them that actually we're not all Westboro Baptist Church crazies
Oh,
who who want to sort of enslave everybody and tell them that they can't go to the cinema or what I mean, like yeah.
bloody Westboro Baptist Church. They are a blight on the face of the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just.
Insanity. But you've kind of segued into something we touched on briefly at the beginning about, the fact that being religious in the West has almost become a bad thing. But it seems to be slowly a bit of a revival. And this is a topic that I actually follow. I follow a lot of different topics. If anyone who follows me on Twitter will see, I'm probably the most random ADHD tweeter of all time. One minute I'm tweeting about gameplay, the next I'm politics, the next I'm talking about religion. But there seems to be almost, particularly amongst a lot of young men, but a bit of almost a revival in religion, or the Christian religion, in that with the almost uh, viral popularity of atheism, and basically denouncing religion. And there's no denying that religion over the millennia that it's been around has been responsible for a lot of ills in
Mm.
society and in the world, but it's also been responsible for a lot of good. But the push away from it, there's a lot of people arguing now that um, this has led to a lot of some of the issues that we're seeing in Western society, in that a lot of, in particular, young men are really struggling with finding identity, something to cling to. And that's where they're ending up, looking at the people like your Andrew Tates, who
Yeah.
I've been very opinionated on. Whilst I do not deny that some of the things he says are right, only some, not a lot. But he's just a thoroughly despicable person at his core. And it
Yeah.
worries me immensely that a lot of young men who are, you and I in our discussions before this, we'll talk about tribalism and all the rest of it. It's in our nature. Humans are tribal creatures, and we will gravitate towards the alphas, the sigmas, whatever you want to call them, and with the lack of better, more peaceful role models out there, they're gravitating to the types like him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of the things I was able to study with my training was all about sort of social theory and social identity theory and how we other people and how sort of what builds our group is actually putting down the other group, all those sorts of things. But I mean, people want meaning, they want discipline, they want rituals. And some of these people give them, you should do this. You should, even the sort of classic thing was sort of like, oh, you need to
Jordan
be
Peterson,
organized. You need
clean
to
your
make your
room.
bed. Yeah,
Yeah,
clean your room. And it's like obviously there's a truth in that, but you get that without there being a sort of morality to it, or without there being a sort of view system to it, and people just go sort of crazy in whatever way, and it becomes about hustling, about making money, about how you treat people not mattering, and that is a problem. But I've said like we're playing Daisy or playing anything, everyone's got routines, rituals, things that are almost sacred to them. They every Sunday they do this, they see their family every this week. And what we get from being part of a church is actually a rhythm to the day, to the year, to the month, to the week. And I think for a long time churches tried to be as they really didn't want to be weird. So they thought, oh, well, our services can't be weird, our language can't be weird, we can't have any of those robes and stuff. It just needs to be as normal as possible because then everyone will enjoy it and they'll come. And as I say, I've really been blessed by the sort of some of the music and some of the traditions that I've been involved in. But actually, I think what people are looking for now is this is so different, this is so weird that actually it feels like I'm part of something. And so as a young man, I mean, I've been going into prison a little bit recently, which has been really interesting. That's a whole thing. And speaking to people who have maybe had addiction issues, for people to be at the lowest of low, and then to have a community where they can be part of something, where they can have practical things to do, where they can make friends, where they can find meaning, where they can have a routine. It just massively helps. And if they're anything like me, I mean, I literally about a week ago finally got diagnosed as ADHD. Um, I totally crave routine, and yet I'm just completely in my own headspace, unable to find it. And so being able to find places where people are just going to put their arm around your shoulder and say, right, well, why don't you try this and this? It just creates so much. And that's aside from, as I say, the whole belief system, which is very important. We even think about all the studies that say that people who pray, it sort of really benefits their mental health. It's not necessarily to say that they've got the right belief or why they believe it or anything, but actually just believing in meaning and purpose, or just quieting yourself, are things which massively help. And so long as people are able to find that, and it's not all just about being told that they can be a proper man if they go to church or whatever, provided it's about all those things, it's fantastic. And I really want to encourage anybody, and churches, historically, particularly in the Church of England, will be 60 to 70% women. And so for men to be able to find something and find role models is brilliant.
You
It's
allow
really good.
female vicars as well in the Church of England too, don't you?
Yeah. And so obviously that's something different from the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
It's something which has been not relatively new. I mean, I think they had female priests the year I was born, which was 94, so it's been a while. But
There's not a
female
lot of
bishops were.
religions that do that, though.
No, and it's one of the things that puts people off. I mean, when I was sort of becoming a Christian, I was really put off by the way that people were treated in religion, particularly how women were treated, particularly how LGBT people were treated. And I was like, I've got so many friends, who are LGBT or who are women, and they aren't treated equally within these religious circles. And I don't know where you get that from. Obviously, you could go into huge depth on many of the confusions and difficulties and translations and things of the Bible. But actually, fundamentally, when you look at the teaching of Jesus and the teaching of the New Testament,
Love
it's
thy
all
neighbor.
about people being, it's about love your neighbor, about there being no Jew or Gentile, slave or free, about people being one, about people coming together, someone having sort of inherent worth, and this idea of actually people genuinely being equal, and it not being about some people are more equal than others or whatever. Genuinely, people have a purpose. They've been made on purpose. They've got a reason. They can do what they want, but actually they are loved, and so that gives you infinite. It's a different lens which changes how you look at the world. And as I say, people get really bogged down, and obviously like big issues and what do I believe, and the good and the bad, and you've got to weigh all that up. But being able to look at the world for a particular lens and see that actually it's not all doom and gloom, although there's a lot of that, I think it can be tremendously helpful. And particularly, as I say, some of these men who are on the street or in prison or struggling with addiction, just being able to say to them, people have trod this path before, and there is a way forward for you that means that you can be helpful, that you can be useful, but also says that it's okay to be you, it's okay to be the person who you are. um, it made a huge difference to me, and it makes a huge difference to others. And we can find that in all sorts of places. So I'm never about pushing people directly to church, but provided they go to the right one, which I'm not saying is easy, I think a load of people would be overwhelmed by the experience that they would have, once they get past the weirdness of going to church or sort of speaking to someone about faith. It is a whole different world, but I think that is something which is increasingly um, appealing to people because of the state of the world that we live in and the sort of lack of guidance that we can find on a day-to-day basis in the news or in politics or whatever. Anyway.
It's one of the strange things with being a content creator, and that parasocial relationships that form between the creator and the viewers, because it just comes down to this thing of people crave connections, and especially after what happened with COVID and the lockdowns and all the rest of it, and especially with a lot of the younger, we've got a whole generation of people now who missed out on some really formative years of creating bonds. And
Mm.
regardless of whether they're, your stereotypical incel living at home with mum and dad or whatever, everyone still craves those connections, and they'll seek them however they can get them, whether it be with some anime character on a stream or with someone who is streaming. And you've got to be very careful with those sort of relationships. Like, what sort of advice would you give people about dealing with the parasocial relationships that you can form in streaming?
I think you've just got to be aware that you have power through that, and you have influence in any way that you do. And obviously, we've seen that in all sorts of abuses of power in every sort of walk of life. I mean, I
Yeah,
was for a little while, and I'm not
Harvey
doing it now because it
Weinstein.
all got a bit weird. Well, yeah, I mean, I was doing vertical streaming on YouTube, so people were seeing me in their YouTube shorts or their TikToks or whatever TikToks. But I've not been doing that because so many people, it was like they'd be clearly a sort of a Gen Z kid who just wants attention, so they'd be saying crazy stuff and they'd be sending you messages and they'd be sort of voice messaging people in Discord, but they're wanting to reach out in some way. I've also had people who have wanted sort of shout outs because their kids been watching, and I'm like, there's three of us watching. But because you're the person on the screen, you have a responsibility. I've already come across streamers who have formed relationships with people in a way that hasn't been helpful to them.
Oh yeah.
Just because people will people will take your word for stuff. They'll take your advice. There's a confidence about how you come across. And it's exactly the same in politics or the church or anything like that, where people will look to you as a figure who knows what they're talking about. And so you just have to be aware of that. If you're aware of that, then hopefully you're not going to misuse that. Whereas if you just pretend that that's, if you pretend that that's not the case, then it's a fool's errand, really, because no matter who you are and no matter how long you've been doing it, there will be somebody who is looking to you, and you just need to be aware that that is a precious thing that you can't abuse and you can't sort of um, treat somebody as you wouldn't want to be treated.
Have you ever thought of giving a sermon in game?
I think sometimes the way that the way that I speak and the way that you're sort of riffing on something, I said to someone the other day, that's basically a sermon. So we were talking about different belief systems, and we were talking about a particular parable that Jesus told. It's the one with the talents where people are sort of burying their money or whatever. And I was saying, like, we think that this is like, oh, you need to make the most of your life, or you need to believe this particular thing. But in so many cases, the point of the story will be you've misunderstood what life is about, and therefore you've made bad choices. That's what a sermon is.
You just made me think of
Someone does it.
the tweet I put out that you liked. Jesus or God visits a
Oh,
Pentecostal church. Or that's not what I said.
so funny.
Why do I need all this money?
So funny, and we need to be challenged with these things. So I mean, so often, I think hopefully you want people to go to church and hear a sermon and think that was just us having a chat about some stuff, and then you also want people in the stream to be like hearing you chat about stuff and then realizing that actually in the best form. And obviously, I've watered it down in terms of I don't want to give you stuff about the Holy Trinity or whatever. But actually, this is what a sermon is. It is life advice based on wisdom, and we've received wisdom, we've received teaching, and what we're trying to do is interpret that in such a way that helps us to live. That's what a sermon is. And so I'd probably never sort of be like, right, this is my sermon now. Yet actually, you start rolling on something and you're basically preaching anyway. And I think
I think
that's been
I think it'd be hilarious to see one. I think it'd be fantastic. Yeah, find a high pop server, get everyone in,
yeah.
broadcast it over the PA or something. Go to altar, Priestify Sunday sermon, and
Yeah.
kind of mix it with a message to suit the apocalypse sort of thing. I think that could be hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be just, instead of telling people how to sort of live their lives from day to day, it'd be like, and some of you have been feeding people human fat for far too long, and you've just got to consider your actions. And like it's
Yes,
funny.
That's
it's always the balance of. I think I'd be terrible at like role playing a priest because I know the intricacies. So it's all about sort of filling in forms and sort of legislation. And I'd be I can't, if people are making it up, then it's all the sort of hear ye in nomine patre. You know, it's much easier to
yeah.
do that from an outside point of view. I feel like I'm a bit too close to it, but yeah, it's just it's the sort of thing where people hear my name. I usually introduce myself in game as priest. And sometimes people will be like, "Oh, that's a strange name," and depending on the day, they'll say, "Oh, you're a priest," and I'll be like, I'll never quite say no, but I'll be like, "Oh, well, you know, I try to be a good person." Other times we have that conversation, but what I don't want someone to be is like, "Oh no, not again. Here's one of these guys."
Have
They
you
might
had
say,
anyone
"Oh,
just shoot you?
not for saying that my name's priest, no," and I've not really yet, and it will come, and that's fine. I've not really had anybody who's you know, come into chat who's been overly sort of negative or abuse the rules that we've got. I still sort of try and stick to what most people have, which is not really have any political chat. But unlike most streams, I would allow religious chat, and yet up to now that's been totally positive. I'm aware there'll be a whole world of people who will just avoid the stream altogether. My titles recently, a bit tongue in cheek, have been Daisy's favorite priest because it sounds like weird. It's like what's that? And it saves me having to think up of new titles every time.
I could sense a rivalry between you and Reverend starting soon.
There's a few people who I've come across who have been sort of reverends in one way or another, or that's been their name. And I think this is the thing. Most people, even if they've looked at my profile, they would not pick up. You know, they've been watching me for 3 days, and they're like, "Wait a second, that's actually what you do." So it's not something we talk about loads, but it's
No.
something I try to be as normal and as tongue in cheek about as possible, just so that it normalizes it. Because people are then like, "Oh, well, what do you do? What's your job?" I meet people, even in the church, who, because of that parasocial thing, they think that you just sort of lie down at the back of the church and unroll your sleeping bag and go to sleep, and then you pop up on Sunday, you give your sermon, and then people don't think of priests, even if they go to church, as like a real person who's got real interests, who's got a family, who's got friends. And so what I think this is doing for me is, on both sides of the coin, is it's sort of opening people's eyes to what things are like. From a church point of view, it's like, oh yeah, there's other ways to interact with people. It doesn't have to be in these four walls. For people outside the church, it's like, yeah, you can have a weird job and be a priest and be a normal guy who has the same interest as you, but just has a a bit of a different job and way of life, sort of thing.
Why do you think there's been so much negativity for some time towards um, predominantly the Christian faiths?
I think we've all come across stuff which is bad and which we can all say is bad. Whether that be Westboro Baptist Church, whether that be abuse, whether that be sort of people who've been really dogmatic. For every experience you have that's positive, you've had 100 of someone shouting at you that you're going to hell on a street corner, or asking if you've been fornicating in the street or whatever. That is the picture that people have. And so it's like, well, why would I want to be part of that? We think of sort of God botherers. We think of people who are going to tell us how to live our life, people who are going to tell us off, particularly in the Church of England. A lot of people who I meet who have been going to church for some time, from the sort of 1950s until fairly recently, the vicar was like the Victorian schoolmaster who was going to tell you off, and if a child came into church, oof, they better not make a sound. So we've gone from a generation, probably sort of, maybe even Gen X, sort of boomers, Gen X, is actually they haven't really had the most, in lots of cases, had the most nurturing experience of church, and so they're pushing back against that and into their own desire for freedom. I mean, the good thing now is if someone's interested in going to church, or if they're going to go to church, they actually want to do it. In the past, it was like, oh, and everyone went to church every Sunday and they all loved it, and you sort of think that's brilliant and that's really good for society. But how many people went along because they were told to and didn't ask questions of their own life? So I think there's an element of
It was
the
also a
way
big
that you.
thing for community building back in the day as well. Like I remember my nana telling me, the stories of when she was a little girl. And Sunday was a big day. It wasn't just about church. It was about everyone in the neighborhood. This is going to look at about 1910, 1920s era. So World War One sort of era. No internet, no home phones or anything like that. So it was a big occasion. And one of the few things that got everyone to come together. And it's a lot harder to generate that sort of drive for something like just going to church on a Sunday now.
Yeah, and it's become for a lot of people something that they do for an hour on a Sunday morning, and they're looking at the clock and they're wanting to go home because they've got the day, and it's become like I'm going to tick this box, and that's never what it was in the past. I say for some people it was, but yeah, it was such a pillar of community, and so I think maybe that was led to some people being treated as they should have been. Of course, it was for other people though. It's been the absolute lifeblood of their life. But where we've got to in most places is often a case of, yeah, this is something that I do for an hour. I don't really think about it. It doesn't affect the way that I live. I'm not really in a community with other people. It's just something that I do. And it's like we want to reach out in lots of ways. Lots of churches do sort of online services and things, which is a new way of doing that. But if unless it's done in the right way, it's very consumer type thing. And the church isn't
Yeah.
very good at it's not supposed to be good at being really flashy and really exciting and really dynamic. Actually, it's a grounded, local, gritty thing that people get involved in because they meet people who they never would have got on with before. And it's a place where you can be, talking to someone who's got completely different ideas about life than you, but you're brought together by this one thing. And so if you're able to find that connection, whether it's online or in person, that's great. But if it just becomes oh, where's the nearest place that does things exactly, it preaches what I want to hear. It sort of has the political slant that I want. It's got, the walls are painted in this color. Then it just becomes a consumer thing, which the church is never supposed to be, really. Um,
What are the numbers like for you in attendance? Been growing or staying steady or?
I think growing. I think since obviously most churches in the world, but particularly in the Church of England, obviously really struggled through COVID. The numbers have been going back up, but anywhere between, I mean, I look after two churches, and one would be somewhere between 30 and 40 people on a Sunday. One would be between sort of 40 and 50. And it varies a lot, like anything else. The weather's too good, too bad, the roads are closed. It's one of these things. But the numbers have been going up, and what I'm particularly interested in is, we have a big focus on new people, on sort of children and families, on sort of people who maybe haven't been to church before, as well as those who have been coming in the past, but then they've been isolated, and they haven't been able to do anything. The biggest thing that we've done in one of our churches, which doesn't sound like anything, is we went from having one service on a Sunday to then having a service during the week and then having like a coffee morning, a craft group, and a sign that says free coffee. And so we're basically open from 9 till 4 one day a week. And people come in for a variety of reasons. We were giving out coats when it was winter. It was sort of tea and coffee. It was a craft group. They could come for a sort of a soup for lunch. And really, just that's the point, is being at the center of the community. Um, and I think this is what people misunderstand. If you sort of get your megaphone out and start preaching at people in the street, uh, uh, one person will be interested and 1,000 people will be scarred for life. Whereas if you sort of put that to one side and just give to people freely and sort of, give them a coffee and be there if they want to talk to someone, there might be 30 people who come and it doesn't seem as quite as glamorous. But of those people, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 who are going to be like, why are you acting like this? Why are you treating me like this? Why are you extending kindness to me when that's not the norm? And maybe that causes them to be like, oh well, maybe I'll try out the service thing. I don't really know what it's about. It's a much better way of doing things. It doesn't seem as sort of glamorous or as sexy, but it's honest and it's true, and it's the way of it's the way of Jesus, I think. But it's also the way that actually changes people's outlook and lives, rather than just being like, I need to get my morale. I think that this is we could talk about the lack of guidance or morality in society, and that's really important. But what churches do instead is they say, right, I need to just make sure that everyone knows that the most important thing is that they need to behave like this. And people just think, well, who are you to tell me that? I don't have the respect and authority in the community that I would have done 50 years ago, where people want to know what I've got to say about something. If they do, they'll tell me. But I think it's a terrible idea for me to have some sort of respect and lack of accountability because of my role. You need to earn people's trust. And so the idea that the church is this sort of moral compass for everyone that people without any sort of criticism just need to listen to, that's going away. But that does give us the opportunity of being able to speak to people in a language that they understand, about loving one another, about including people, about welcoming people, and being the place where people can go when they've got nowhere else to turn. That's the most important thing.
That is a big thing that at the end there, because there are so many young people, especially, but even some older people who just feel they've got no one they can turn to. You know, for whatever reasons, they've just lost contact, or retreated into themselves, and you know, we're, we're humans. We crave relationships with other people. Some people need more, some people need less. I'm quite happy with the way my life is, with my son, my wife, my dogs, and my online social relationships with people, and that's pretty much it for me. And I'm happy with that. But at least I've got people. There are a lot of people out there who just feel they've got no one they could turn to, who'll listen to them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's been the experience of, as I say, it's quite a new thing. Me being able to visit the local prison. I've done that sort of 2 or 3 times, and I'm going in on Sunday just to see what it's like. And you're just aware that so many of these guys, because it's a men's only prison, maybe about 1,000 men, where I am, all sorts of complicated backgrounds, and obviously that's through drugs. That might be through parents being on drugs when they were born, through abuse or lack of role models. A lot of mental health issues, huge numbers, obviously, of people who have got either learning difficulties or sort of ADHD or autism, who just haven't been able to express themselves. Um, and actually, you do get some people who, of what I'm experiencing, they're just wanting to sort of take the mick. They just want to try and, put something down on a form, which means that they feel like they get noticed. But so many people, they just want somebody to talk to who knows that they're not going to go around telling everybody what they've said, and they're just going to listen. People want a different perspective. So, as I say, the best thing for me is not that people think that I'm some sort of expert, but that absolutely anybody can say to me, "Can I just talk to you about something?" And except in cases of sort of a safeguarding nature, they can have a strong confidence that I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to go around talking behind their back. I will just sort of listen. And I think unless you're getting paid counselling, or sort of some sort of support for counselling, that's really hard to come by. Is somebody who is just completely neutral, who you might never speak to again, but you can just sort of pop into and have a word with, and then go about the rest of your day. If that's all
Well,
that we can achieve, fantastic.
that's a great segue for the sponsor of today's episode, BetterHelp. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would not touch them with a 10-foot pole, because that's a you're laughing. You know about them. It was a pretty
Yeah,
dodgy,
not loads, but I know about some of that. Yeah,
and that's one of the sad things as well, because there's so many people out there, not just the Andrew Tates and that, but there's a lot of people. Mental health is such a big thing of late, and COVID was a massive part of that. A lot of people, gamers for the most part, we were all kind of like, hey, I've got to stay home and I can only interact online. This is my time to shine, baby. But
yeah,
for a lot of other people, it was really stressful. I even just I was watching a video about a woman. It was a true. I love true crime stuff, and she had a flatmate, so she was stuck in a house with someone who wasn't family or even a close friend, and it was like, wow, I didn't even consider that. Yeah, there would have been a lot of people out there who
mm,
were pretty much confined like that. And there's a lot of people grifting around this whole mental health side of things.
yeah,
From the likes of a Jordan Peterson through to an Andrew Tate, through to there's versions on the other side of the aisle as well, that aren't really going to be the best help for some of these people who really need it, because it's so easy to get trapped into a thought bubble, where all you hear, an echo chamber, where all you're hearing is people either reaffirming what you think, what your psychosis, or what whatever rabbit hole you've gone down. And it's really important that they try to find people that they can talk. And where I'm going with this was back with what you said about how you'll let people talk about things in your streams, and that I do think that's one of the most important things. I know it's hard, and if you do just want to play games and all the rest of it, but for a lot of people, they don't have anywhere that they can, be either told that what they're thinking is batshit crazy, or what
yeah.
they're thinking is, yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And so many people are just scared to talk now.
Yeah, yeah, and for fear of judgment, for fear of saying something wrong, for having the wrong perspective, and then their friends don't respect them, we sort of echo, like you say, what other people think, and that's made all the worse by social media. And so, first of all, like you say, that ability just to talk to somebody, just for somebody to listen, but then where appropriate as well to say, like, mate, that I don't think that's quite right. Because we don't get that opportunity. You're not allowed to challenge people. And as I say, I don't do a great deal of that. But sometimes just saying to people, have you thought about it this way? And then knowing that, yeah, I don't have anything to sell. It's not that I'm trying to sign them up to the party. It's not that I'm trying to sort of get their money or their membership, or I'm hoping that they're going to sort of buy my course. It's obviously all of us have got bills to pay and stuff we want to do. And I think one of the things that I've been, really sort of clear about, or try to be really clear about with the streamers, if somebody, I talk about my sort of faith and my work and all that sort of stuff over on Patreon, and I make everything free, but occasionally there's going to be someone who wants to make a donation, who wants to support. I just want to be really clear that that is something where they're supporting me for what I'm doing. It's not like they're sort of becoming a member of the
Buying
church or
their
giving to
entry
the
to
church,
heaven.
or well, yeah, like it, and it's a huge slippery slope. So it's like, on the one sense, you can never ask for any sort of money or do anything, and then you don't find that you're able to do the things that you want to. But much more the case is that actually, yeah, people are like, oh well, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, so that the algorithm will recommend more people like you, and you'll buy my book. You'll do my course. You'll enroll in my sort of, and it becomes like a cult, and so people can't be themselves. They're just trapped in another sort of echo chamber, but from a different perspective this time.
This is Max, or Maximus.
Lovely.
He's my little
Lovely.
baby. He likes to come. He's my co-star. He's not smart enough to be a producer like Hopper Boo, who's down on the floor. But yeah, he's a good boy, this one.
Because
He's
I got
fat.
small dogs, it's always yeah. I can just, if if one of my dogs has been annoying, I can just pick them up under my arm and sort of throw them, not throw them. But obviously, whereas big dogs, it's just like
Don't hit the
I wouldn't be able
microphone.
to cope.
Nah, I love him. Come on, buddy. Down you get. Come on. Down you get. Down you get. Oh my God, you're big. Oh, he's a big boy. Yeah, because he grabbed my train of thought then. Good on you, Max. You meant to make the show better, not make Dad worse. Yeah, it does scare me just how much people try to shut down anyone with even some extreme views. Like talk about Twitter. It used to be very heavily moderated. Now you could argue that they've gone a bit too far to unmoderated, but I stand by, like, I'd like people to be able to say that what they think, so that someone can challenge them on that. I have a lot of hot takes at times, and I like it when people challenge me on it. I've got one good friend who I chat with quite a lot, and we view nearly everything differently. But at the end of the day, we pretty much, barring a couple of times, for the most part, we always end up, anyway, mate, I'll see you same time tomorrow. We'll continue our discussions. It's so important to be able to find someone and remember that just because you disagree on something doesn't mean that person is inherently a bad person. There are very few people who are inherently evil. They just view things differently, regardless of whether it's a religious ideology, a political ideology, or whatever form of ideology. Most people are inherently good. They just see things differently. And it's amazing to me how so many people could look at the same thing, see the same thing, and have a completely different take on it.
Yeah. And that lack of conversation is what allows people to troll or rage bait or just say something so outrageous because there's no consequence, because they haven't got anybody to actually say, like, look, what is this? And so, yeah, I think that the idea that people can say what they want, but there sometimes are consequences. If you say something that's really extreme and is like terribly sort of racist or something like that, well, actually, you need to understand that that is something which should be challenged, and our actions have consequences in terms of the ways that we behave.
Freedom of
But
speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences.
yeah, and so I think being able to speak to somebody, and this is why it's much easier and it's much more sort of sellable and marketable to be sort of extreme and dogmatic in one view or the other. And so you get a lot of people, and I come across a lot of obviously political stuff or religious stuff, which is like very, almost rage baity. It's sort of clickbaity. It's like, this is what you need to believe. And it's much less exciting to be nuanced and to say, oh, well, I think in lots of ways I often talk down religion, and people think, well, why are you doing that? Because you're supposed to be promoting it. But it's just trying to have a more well-rounded view of things. And I if I sort of came, as so many of my colleagues and lots of other people do, if I came into something with a really strong political view about any issue that's in the news and said, this is what you need to believe, and I think I said to you, I've seen people say, and if you don't believe this, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
You've just shut down all the conversation. And if I've got 50% or sometimes more percent, depending on the view that I have, the minority view might actually be what people believe but don't want to say. If I'm like, well, this is what I believe, then everyone else switches off, because we live in such a world where it's like, well, if you believe that, we can't be friends. You can't be a good
So
person.
messed up.
You can't be. Yeah, and so I think for me, I've often just got to take a step back from that and be like, well, I'm not going to teach you what to believe. I've often heard people say, coming from a perspective of wisdom, we want to teach people how to think, not what to think. We
Yes.
don't need a sort of a list of beliefs where it's like, well, you got to believe this and you can't question it. It's about actually, how do we critically look at the world with eyes that help us to focus on caring for one another without being, and this is what we were talking about in the prison, without becoming some sort of wet blanket who gets stamped all over, who gets taken advantage of. How can we get the balance of being people who care about others but are also able to care for themselves and put themselves across, rather than being some sort of shell of a person who just gets, as a doormat to everybody else.
There's so much diversion as well happening at the moment. Like, everyone's aware of what's happening in the US with the Epstein files and all the rest of it, and both sides are, trying to highlight this and highlight that, and we're just so unsure of what to think, what to believe, what we can't believe, and it's a very confusing world that we're living in right now. And I do think that's part of the reason why a lot of people are looking back to things like religion, because it's in general, for all of its faults and flaws that it's had, as I said, it's overwhelmingly a positive thing. Yeah, all religions overwhelmingly are meant to be positive. It's just unfortunate that some people use those scriptures and guidances for evil at times. There's no other way to put it, but I think that's why a lot of people are falling back to it, because at least it's something that's a bit more stable than a lot of the political ideologies that are out there at the moment.
Yeah, and sometimes we need, we need just a system to fit in with. We need a group to be part of. We need to be told, these are the things that we do around here, and these are the things that we believe. And so long as we're able to sort of question and push back and ask questions, that's absolutely fine. The difference between a sort of religion and a cult is the fact that you can ask questions, or you can have doubts, or you can, and you're not pushed out for that. But people need something to be part of. I mean, one thing which is interesting for me, as I say, being somebody who craves all of this order but really struggles to find it within myself, is I've joined up in sort of Yorkshire, near here. There's a monastery. So these are sort of Anglican Benedictine monks. These are guys who live in this monastery for life, and they have their services, which they put online 4 times a day, and it's like the different prayers, and then they do work and all this sort of stuff. It's called the Community of the Resurrection, and they've got a way of life which is all about hospitality and prayer and things like that. And so I go there quite often on these silent retreats where you're sort of silent for days on end, which I really struggle with, where you get involved in their services. And I've joined their society. They've given me this little cross which I sometimes remember to wear. But the sort of the Benedictine rule of life and ideal is all about is sort of stability, as in terms of being in one place. Something about sort of commitment and faithfulness. And then they often talk about conversion of life, which I think used to mean, and particularly does mean for sort of monks, like celibacy or something like that. But in terms of committing to a particular way, there are things that I don't do as a result of this decision that I've made, as well as things that I do do. And so things like that, they've got such a history. I mean, there's places I've never been myself, but there's a huge place in France called Taizé or Teze, which is this sort of big music type monastery. There's monks and brothers who live there, but every year they get thousands of young people go to be part of these services and do all these sort of pilgrimages and stuff because it's just so different. And I think someone like that, the amount of sort of religious figures or monks or people like that who have lived these lives that have been all about pushing back on hatred, and they've sort of promoted good, and they've brought people together. The number of them who end up getting killed in some way in suspicious circumstances, who some crazy guy comes at them with a knife or a gun, or they go missing, is amazing, because in the right sort of sense, they are speaking truth to power. They're not sort of best mates with the government or whatever, and that becomes the problem, even with sort of state churches and stuff, is that if my career progression, if there's such a thing, is related to who I'm friends with in high places, that becomes a huge problem. But the success of any religion, but particularly Christianity, was always in places of oppression, of places where it was sort of a lifestyle that was a sacrifice. There's this phrase that they used to use in the sort of ancient world, which was that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. So actually, in places where it is really costly for you to have this belief system, that it really helps you, but it pushes against the people who want to keep the status quo as the way it is. That's actually what is appealing to people. If it's like, oh, I'm doing what I'm doing so that I can go and play golf with the local person in parliament, at that point we're completely losing the point of what it's like. It's actually, what I do is something which is good, is something which helps me, but it's also a sacrifice. It means that I say no to things as much as I say yes to things, and people need that in their lives. They need some sort of like, you can drink and smoke and have sex with whoever you want to if you want to, but it's not going to be good for you. And so actually making that decision doesn't have to be, oh, I got told I couldn't do this and it's so unfair. It's like I've put restraint around my life, which has made me better.
This is a big topic that you've segued into here for me. That there's a lot of people out there who they're selfish. There's no other way to put it. Everything is about them, and they don't think of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture means you're going to have to make some sacrifices for the good of everyone. Now, I'm quite an introverted person. My primary focus is my family, but you know. Love me or hate me, I think I've done a lot of good for the DayZ community and raising awareness for things like modders, community service, doing spotlight interviews like this, my own little way, shape, or form. I could have just been a shitty content creator putting out mediocre quality gameplay videos, but I realized I wasn't good at it, but I can talk. So what I try to do, and when it's not a huge sacrifice, but I put a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort into what I do, trying to do things for the good of everyone, trying to, the philosophy I have with the Creator Club, the main motto of it is a rising tide lifts all boats. But there are so many people, they're only in it for themselves. What can I get out of this? And that saddens me at my very core, and it makes me very disillusioned with society in general. And I think that's another part of the, you can, there's so many other things, and I've been down these rabbit holes as well about what's leading to the decline of the West and all the rest of it. But I think that's one of the core things of it is we're forgetting that we are a community. We're not tribal per se in the respect of when I was in Somalia, I got to see real tribalism. Basically each village was its own tribe, its own family. They were all warring. That's just ridiculous level. But we're forgetting that we've gone past that point of that sort of level of tribal. Each village, each community, each whatever divided us to our identities are so obscure now that there's very little connecting people, and most people are just falling back on what can I get out of this. They're grifting, and it scares me.
Yeah, and it's and that's bad for obviously the world. It's even bad for us because we don't realize that when we get what we want, it's not always good for us. And I mean, Jesus talks about the first will be last, and not lording it over people. And because the way of the world is that if we want to get somewhere, we step on somebody else, and if we don't do that, well, we've been stepped on, and so we fall behind, whether that is in our community, in our life. Whatever. I mean, one of the interesting things when we were in the, and I say this is like a sermon, even though it's not, when we were in the prison, is they were talking about the Beatitude. So it was, blessed are the meek. And so people think about meek being weak, but then also about hunger and thirst for righteousness. And so actually you're talking to people who have done things wrong about justice and about righteousness. But that one was about those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be satisfied. And what's really interesting is we find that when we get whatever we want, we're not satisfied. You know, if what you want to do is drink and do drugs and sleep around and any of that sort of stuff, or just pursue your own thing, you're always searching for something more. You're never going to achieve that. All of these things lead to, it's just a pit. Whereas actually, when we find out that in any way whatsoever, whether it's in our family, whether it's volunteering at a local dog shelter, whether it's helping with, you know, building sheds for people in need, anything, we actually find that that satisfies in a way that all these other things can't. And so it's this thing of we sort of eat ourselves in our selfishness, or we just be a little bit less selfish and we find that our whole life gets better as a result of it. It's just hard. It just doesn't make sense.
It's, you know, I've spoken about this in the past as well. You know, porn addiction, drug addiction, all these addictions. You know, like Diesel said, instant gratification, and like you were saying that every time you get something, you find it doesn't satisfy you as much each time. So then you either crave more, and most people they get their addictions to whatever it is they're seeking. And in today's society, everything is, you know, literally almost anything you want is a Google search away, from being able to see boobies, from being able to order drugs, being able to find someone who's reiterating whatever echo chamber you're trapped in. And it's a scary world. And especially when, you know, you could get all of this, you know, literally without having to leave your house. Yeah. There's a lot of craziness going on in the world right now.
Yeah, and we lose we lose what happens through struggling. Now, there's a lot of people who really struggle, and we need to help them. But if there's no struggle, if there's no striving, then actually it's then nothing good happens. And I think the path that I could have gone on, and the path that so many people do, is they I was from a sort of what I mean, this is a big level and a small level. So on the big level, societally, I would have been from what would have been a sort of working class background, but actually you find that people end up on sort of benefits, and so there's sort of one generation to another where people are able to, for good reason to begin with, get support in terms of in terms of benefits. But what that happens is I could then think, well, I don't need to work and I don't want to work. And actually, it's hard to do that. But what that does is it means that I can, I feel free. Like I feel like I can just sit around and do whatever I want all day, but I'm trapped in terms of I'm not able to achieve anything. I feel as though I've got no meaning. I'm not able to contribute. I've not got any purpose.
And let's be honest, the money that you get from that, it's not, you're not living large in most cases. So you're barely scraping by. So your resentment builds up and you just become more and more bitter at society in general.
And I'm not saying that, so in this country, for instance, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the individual's fault. I was speaking to somebody who was saying that, based on their family and their children, that actually if they were to go and work 60 hours a week, they would end up with less. And so actually they're in a situation where they're sort of trapped within that because they can't sort of try and do something more for their family, because if they do, they would actually end up struggling more.
Of the system.
And it's a big trap. So on the one hand, you've got that with sort of society as a whole and work and all those sorts of things. But then even on a sort of meta level, it's a case of, because we don't have to struggle for anything, there's no friction. And even when it comes to things like AI, you come across all sorts of studies now which are saying that even when someone does use AI for coding or for writing or whatever, it's not just that there's mistakes in it or that they don't have to put the effort in, but it actually makes them dumber in some ways, that they lose the ability to think for themselves. And so one of the things I've heard people talk about is, in the same way that we now need gyms because we're not all doing manual labor all the time, and so if we're going to exercise physically, we need a place to do that. We're almost heading towards a future where we need sort of mental gyms, because we otherwise we will just become mentally dependent on, press the button and get the treat. And that's a scary thing as well.
It is. That's a really, really good point. That it's why I deliberately, because I'm on a pension, a military pension from my time in the army and that. But I try to make sure to constantly find stuff that gets the grey matter thinking, especially after my few little strokes and that as well, where I think I've gotten even stupider. But I've got a very smart son, and I'll find topics because he's studying here, or he studied history, and I'll find stuff and try to have discussions with him around that sort of stuff, so that I'm not just sitting there looking at a man gets hit and groined by football, because I've seen the movie Idiocracy. That shit scares me, and that's the way that we're starting to head. That, and all it takes is for something to happen, and there's so many. This is not conspiracy theory stuff, but you look back to that solar flare that happened in the late 1800s or 1900s that burnt the telegraph wires, and that if something like that happened in today's day and age, there are countries that are going to be down for months, if not years, if all the transformers or transponders and that are destroyed by it. And that's pretty much no internet, no electricity. How are people going to get by? These are things that could happen. And we're so reliant on technology and instant gratification that it'd be a pretty freaky time.
Yeah, and it's so when we say people need in-person human connection in whatever small way that they can get, it's not just that actually our brains recognize speaking to someone face to face, more than they recognize doing something online or via a message. It's not just that. It's actually if we forget how to talk to people, and we forget how to interact with people, and how to, go into a shop. I mean, so much sort of social anxiety around because they don't need to pick up the phone, and they don't need to speak to somebody in person, and those things are difficult. But it's like in situations where you can't depend on what you need to. I think I don't know if it was 2013, it was before the current war, but sort of around the sort of Crimea crisis. I think there was a point where there was a cyber attack from Russia on Ukraine, and all of the sort of cash machines went down, all of the ability to use cards went down, and it shut civilization down because
And a lot of people just
all
don't
the
know how to
infrastructure was gone.
prepare for this. We had a cyclone that hit Brisbane earlier this year, or end of last year, and it's very unusual for a cyclone to come this far down south. But I saw all the advice that even our government was putting out, and I finally said, "Most of this stuff is bullshit." And because I'd lived in North Queensland, which is cyclone country, for years, second nature for me. And I did a tweet, and I actually had a few people reply to me, and they just said, "This is the best advice we've seen." And what made me think of it was what you just said. I said to people, if the power goes, that means internet's gone. That means cash register's gone. So I highly suggest you go down to the bank now. If you've got the cash, draw out $200-300, whatever you can, and have it ready, because you're not going to be able to buy shit if the electricity's down. And people were just like, I didn't even think of that, because they're so used to PayWave or whatever, or touch your tap and go, or whatever you call it these days. There's so much, but I hope it doesn't come to that, Diesel. A Sodom and Gomorrah type reset. For those who don't know, Sodom and Gomorrah. Priestify, this is your time to shine. Idiot's Guide to Sodom and Gomorrah.
It's a story where two places called Sodom and Gomorrah, I think because of the sort of extent of how messed things up were, they were basically cities where places in the Old Testament, in the Bible, were given so many opportunities to sort of turn around and change. And there's even the story as if there's 100 people who are good, if there's 10 people who are good, if there's one person who's good, the city will be saved. But actually they are destroyed. And so there's the whole thing about and obviously you could go into this in all sorts of different ways, but there's Lot's wife who turns back, and she's turned into a pillar of salt. And I think the point is really because of the sort of extreme depravity and lack of care for others, that actually these places fall into ruin. And I think that's the best way that you can look at it, is actually civilization is impossible without some degree of caring for one another. And so in this particular case, they are used as sort of examples of places that they just don't exist anymore because of the extent of the lack of care for people, and the extent of the destruction that is caused when we're just totally selfish.
We're getting into a little bit of a dark area, so I think we probably need to try to perk things up a bit. What's some of the things that you've been seeing lately that's making you feel positive for the future?
Some of what you said about actually people looking for meaning and people trying to find hope, I think is really important. As I say, it's not totally doom and gloom. We've got so many opportunities in the world, and things like sort of illness, just around the world, poverty rates. It's very easy to look at the negativity, but because of the advances of sort of science and the humanities, there is a lot to be hopeful for. And even the fact that, since COVID, that people have adjusted, that there's a lot more that is online. We can look at that in a negative sense, but the positive sense of through streaming, through social media, you're able to reach out and make friends in ways that you weren't before. We are also seeing, I think, a genuine, particularly in young people, desire for more in-person stuff. So certainly in this country, there has been a lot more board game cafes. There's been a rise in people playing Magic the Gathering or Dungeons and Dragons. There is places where you can go for nights out or for different things where, like, it's based on darts or bowling or golf. And so I think that there is an understanding of this. That's meaning that in communities that people are trying to do more stuff that's in person with friends. And I think particularly young people are looking for a different way to live and a way that is more authentic and a way that is a bit more grounded. You can always sort of take the negative side of these things, but I think there is just a desire in society for people, that they want integrity, they want truth, they want connection. And so I think, people always adapt and people always find a way. And so whether that's people looking for meaning, whether that's people coming to church, whether that is people just trying to sort of reach out and make friends in different ways, I think there are a lot of ways in which people are adapting to the times, and that is a sense in which people talk about. Um, Obviously, with COVID and the pandemic, there was so much loneliness and bad, but lots of ways in which people were able to reset and get some perspective, and live in a slightly different way. So that it depends on your perspective. If your perspective is literally doom and gloom because it's all disaster and we're all heading for a
It's
terrible end,
so
then that's
easy
one
to
way of
go
looking
down
at
that
it. Yeah, and
pipeline as
and then
well.
obviously the perspective, as naive as it may seem sometimes, the perspective of having a God of love who makes the world, who cares about the world, who wants to inspire and change people, that actually tells you that things aren't always going to be all right, um, but that there is a way forward. There's always hope. There's always a plan. And so I think even just that as a sort of mental framework helps you to think actually you know it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Things can always be worse. Things can be better, but actually there is a lot of opportunity for us to, and we find that in caring for other people. It's not always in our own selves. We need to look beyond ourselves. That's the biggest theme that brings these two things together. I think is we can't find all the resources that we need within ourselves. We need to care for other people, and that's where we'll find meaning and positivity. That's also where we notice the lack of positivity when it doesn't happen.
Quick question there. Is disc golf popular where you are in the world, Priest?
I don't think so. No, it seems to be the sort of thing which is gaining more popularity. You get like, as I say, just general sort of crazy golf places seem to be doing better, or like football golf or ultimate frisbee. There's a lot of things that are sort of gaining a lot more popularity, but no, not massively. It is. I mean, I'm not the sort of most connected sporty person, but it is interesting to see all these sort of new sports and new ways for people to connect popping up, but not particularly disc golf that I'm aware of, but I'm probably wrong.
I think one of the key things is people have got to start trying to make more of those in-person relationships with people. It's so easy to, find things like an OnlyFans girl or, an Andrew Tate style person and get caught up in those digital online spaces and all the rest of it. But get out, find a group, whether it be a church group, whether it be a group around a hobby that you've got, or something. And even, one of the things that I try to do with my little community in the 87.8 is most weekdays I'll go and sit in the Discord for a couple of hours on a weekday morning. When the missus is at work, just so I can be in there and chat. I've got some issues with my computer regarding streaming. I've got great internet now, but it looks like I might have a hardware problem. So I've got to get that sorted. But I like to just go and sit in a Discord channel so that people could come in. Diesel's been in there. We've had some good chats. Sledge, a number of people come and sit in there with me and just talk. Because even just sitting in a chat when someone's streaming, like the people are watching now, is okay. But hearing a voice, being able to hear the inflection, the tone, it's all these sorts of things that it makes you feel better. Even if you're disagreeing on something, it's so integral to your existence as a person to have contact with other people. And at the very bare minimum, a voice is everything, because it's so easy to lose translation when you're just reading a text message. But when you can hear the inflection, the tone, how words delivered, it's, as you said, that intellectual stimulus that, with the creation of AI and stuff like that, we're starting to lose. So it's important that you do things like that. Reach out to a friend you haven't heard from in a while. Just do a welfare check. I like to do that every now and then. I'll scroll through the list of people I've got DMs with and go, haven't heard from so-and-so in ages, or I haven't seen them posting anything. I'll just send them a message. You all right? Doing okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we
Yeah,
talk about anything and everything in there. Diesel was saying our passionate talks. We were talking about guns and American gun laws and that the other day. And poor old Diesel got ganged up on by all of us socialist commie bastards in the UK and Australia. But it was still a nice chat. It was really, really interesting chat. But yeah, you were going to say, sorry, before I rudely get.
Well, I was just going to say it's great because it's community, and that's what it is at a fundamental level. It's just the ability to talk to someone, and as I say, I think that is part of what we get in DayZ through the voice chat. But then being able to take that a step further within a even a small stream. If there's two people, then you've got a community, and that's somebody who has chosen to spend their time with you, which is fantastic.
A car full of people have. A car full of strangers have decided to go for a drive for 2 to 3 hours with you, which is awesome. Never look at it as bad. Always look at it as that. We've got 7 people watching now. That's a minivan full of people listening to me and you.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, and we've got that ability to be part of something with somebody else. And so, yeah, I think ultimately that is the intersection that I'm trying to go for in terms of any sort of content. I think the sort of the one video that I'd done, which sort of seemed to pick up a bit of steam, was all about, I think it was called "This Game Could Save Your Life," but it was from the perspective of sort of a mental health thing in terms of getting to know people. I'd like to do something about, at a very simple level, how do we sort of make friends and have interactions with people. And from as simple a point as in DayZ, like it's very obvious in lots of ways, but I sometimes struggle to, you always assume that the other person's way more confident and knows what they're doing, but just being like, the questions are, well, obviously saying hello, what's your name, what are you up to, have you got a plan, would you like to run together? And it feels so hard to do that sometimes, but then you might spend the next half an hour in silence with the person. You might have a deep chat with them. You might just talk to them about the game. But it's just the ability to have those things. I think there's a turn back to, I sort of just missed out on them. They were around at the time that I was sort of growing up, but I didn't actually take part in them. On the things like LAN parties. I'd say I never actually went to a LAN party, but obviously because I went to college and was studying games, we've all got Counter-Strike on a memory stick or whatever. Whether it's people playing football, playing five-a-side or some sort of sport, whether it's people going to the pub for a beer, it's those conversations that happen when you're doing something else that aren't like, because if I said to somebody, right, we're now going to talk about society and religion for an hour and a half, they'd be like, why would I do that? But you start, and I would be like, why would we do that? But you start playing a game, you start playing some sport, you start sort of talking and sort of shooting the breeze, and it's amazing how deep you can go with things. It's exactly the same. So, like you were saying, before, if someone doesn't understand why does someone watch a game, why do they watch a sport? It's like playing a sport. It's like unless you're a world class individual, you're not playing it for the accolades. You're playing it for the connection with other people.
Now, I think we're getting close to the end. I need you to tell me if I'm going to hell for this joke or not. Are you ready?
I'll try.
What's this?
Go on. I don't know.
Hell of a way to spend Easter. The fact you laughed. The fact you laugh, I guess I'm not. That's my one. Every Easter comes around. That's my joke, because I'm famous for saying everything is fair in comedy, and I've had a lot of people say, what about religion? And I said, even religion. It's all about where something comes from, and that's what people have got to remember. Everything is fair game for a laugh. One of my favorite movies of all time is Dogma. My God, that is the funniest movie. Have you seen that one?
No.
Oh. Priestify, you and the missus, you need to find a copy of. It's called Dogma, Dogma. It's got Brad Pitt. Who's not Brad Pitt? Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Silent Bob, Chris Rock, Salma Hayek. It's a massive movie, but it's a comedy about religion. Chris Rock plays the 13th apostle, a black guy, and it's so well done. And Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are fallen angels trying to get back into heaven, and it is a absolute comedy gold movie, and it's primarily focused around religion, and the church, the Roman Catholic Church, trying to reinvent itself with Buddy Jesus. It's just a lot of the topics we talk about. I think you'll find it very funny from the religious side of it, about the Roman Catholic churches and all the rest of it. But great movie, and a great comedy, a very, very good comedy. That was absolutely brilliant. But what can we expect from you in the future, Priestify?
I'm going to continue to stream, so I'm doing a little bit more at the moment, just with having some time off work. But I'm going to continue to stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's sort of 8 p.m. my times, which probably means a sort of early morning for you, or sort of early afternoon for sort of US watchers. Stream a few times a week. I'm going to continue to try and make YouTube videos and really just have conversations like this on stream, and then hopefully translate that into some sort of storytelling on of DayZ content in YouTube videos. I want to be in it for the long haul. I want to try and make friends. I think my goal is I could be good at the game and good at content creation if and when there is a DayZ 2. So give me a few years, and hopefully I'll be starting to hit my stride. You know, it's not a sort of a flash in the pan thing, nor am I expecting that it's going to be like a huge success. I'm just here to slowly, sort of day by day, have conversations with people, and so I'm hoping to achieve that over the next couple of years, and just have fun playing games for in my spare time. It's fantastic.
And here's his channels for those of you who wish to check him out and see what he's like when he's live. Twitch.tv/Priestify and YouTube.com /@Priestify, but the second I is a letter 1. I'm guessing someone else already had Priestify.
Yeah, someone who's like done one video and it's got absolutely nothing to do. I don't know why they're called Priestify, but it's got nothing to do with either priests or.
All the good names are gone. Unless you could get in early on a new platform, all the good names are gone. That's the biggest issue facing the youngest generation, is no one's ever going to be able to get their first name anymore. Someone owns all that shit now. But mate, this has been a really, really good chat. I think it's absolutely fantastic that you're doing what you do, because it does have a bad rap in a lot of people's eyes. The West seems to want to hate itself for almost everything these days, from the sins of the past, from colonization to some of the stuff that happened with religious. A lot of that was around colonization, that as well. But like I say, with a lot of things, we've got to move on from that, provided that changes are made and that things are being better. And like I said, all religions, yes, including Islam, even, folks, at its core, they're meant to be about good. But sadly, so much stuff happens around them, and the loudest voices are usually the smallest majority, the ones carrying on and screaming and ranting and raving. So don't be afraid to reach out if you think it's going to be good for you. I didn't want to make this about my life story, but my childhood, I don't think I could ever come back to being it, but I still do believe in a higher power. I'm just more of I believe that as long as you lead a good life, you've got more ticks in your ledger than you do X's, you should be fine, is the way I try to live, and try to make sure that I do more good, by things like giveaways and that. Speaking of which, I've got a big project in the works at the moment that hopefully things come to fruition, but might be doing a nice competition for my favorite community, modders, who always never get enough appreciation. They are the hard-working engine that keeps this DayZ community going on PC, at least.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even on console, the amount of stuff they do over there, they're freaks of nature. Those I don't understand. I'm lucky to be able to remember how to hit the go live button, let alone work all that stuff out. But no, I think it's great what you're doing. I love that video that you put out. And it's just nice seeing a different take on DayZ. Remember, folks, it's not all about PvP. It's about the journeys you make, and the PvP is a big part of that for sure. But never be afraid to reach out and just say hi to someone in game, and you never know what sort of crazy journey you're going to end up on.
Absolutely, and hopefully along the way I can improve at the PvP, but it's not the priority. And I think the other
No.
thing I'd say is, if someone wants to come and say hello in a chat or watch a video or something, you'll find that it's not all serious. It's rarely sort of super serious, but I think it's just that intersection of being able to talk about things that matter while we're all having fun. I think that's really
Have you
important.
ever tried a name trainer?
Yeah, a little bit. I've tried a bit of Aim Trainer. I've tried a bit of deathmatch servers. I'm finding
Yeah.
at the moment that just playing a sort of Essica or a Malsk or something is, because you're in sort of real world situations where someone's pointing a gun at you.
Yeah.
That has been a lot more helpful. But yeah, I have improved. My reaction speed isn't the best, but because actually it's more funny when you have these interactions than not. I haven't sort of really focused on that too much.
Speak to one of the good PvP guys, because one of the things I found that made me a little bit better, but was mouse settings, something that I just don't consider enough. But you may have your mouse set up completely wrong for the way that you prefer. So some of those guys will be able to watch you and say you need to lower or raise, and it's all very complicated for me. But yeah, are you looking for collabs with anyone to run with and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I'm open. I've really enjoyed recently being able to play with others, and just stops me from getting lost in the woods. So yeah, I'm very open to playing with anybody. I just enjoy, and as long as they know that they don't have to worry about how they speak, how they swear. People are always like, "Oh, what can I say? Anything you want." I'm very open to playing with others. I really enjoy it.
You just reminded me, Scale Speeder, I didn't say cunt once in the interview. So he told me I'm not allowed to swear. Oh, I just said I did that deliberately. I'm sorry, Scale Speeder. I couldn't resist.
He's
I was
great.
trying to be a bit better than I'm normally a foul mouthed Aussie bastard.
I'm used to
But
that. We're like that in my part of
it,
the world as well.
no, but it's all about read the room. It's about showing a bit of common respect for your fellow person. And as much as I didn't think it would bother you, I wasn't going to sit here and be my usual self. I can rein it in a bit when I want to, so I'm going to rein it in. I think when you look at the interview I did with Dean Hall, I don't think I swore once. That's because I love the guy and I didn't want to seem like I'm stupider than I am. But yeah, you read the room, people, and you show a bit like we talked about before, a bit of love for your fellow man. And I mean that
Absolutely.
in the inclusive sense, folks, female and male. But yeah, Priestify, this has been a great chat, mate. Thank you so much. Almost 2 hours, buddy. It doesn't even seem
Thank
like it
you.
was that long.
It's been great. Thank you. It's been a really good start of the day because it's just gone about to go 9 a.m. here, so it's been a nice start of the day and really nice to chat to you, mate. Thank you.
All the best, and I will get it back to you all. I think I'm going to be speaking to someone about the legends over at Console have come up with a way to hardware ban people who are creating alts. I don't know whether you know, but on Console, on Xbox, you could have like 20 different alt accounts on the one
Yeah.
console on a server, which was, if you can imagine trying to raid a base that had 10 players and they all had 20 accounts, you're just not going to be able to do it. So they've worked out how they could actually hardware ban, which I thought was just the best news ever. So I'm trying to get someone to explain that to me in the dumbest way possible to so that we could get the news out there that they have come up with a way to solve one of the biggest issues that was facing a lot of community servers. But yeah, all the best, everyone,
Brilliant.
and we will see you next time. Ciao for now.
Thank you.